Well, infrastructure talks in Congress are now stalling on disagreements over expanding the IRS. Lawmakers are now considering abandoning that proposal to raise revenue through enhanced agency enforcement. They'll need to come up with an alternative to pay for the $1 trillion package, of course. But President Biden's plans was to spend $80 billion, send $80 billion to the IRS to hire 87,000 new auditors to find taxes that were unpaid. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez admitting progressives will, quote, tank the bipartisan bill if Democrats do not deliver and pass that $3.5 trillion spending bill through reconciliation. Joining me right now is Ohio Congressman and Financial Services Committee member Warren Davidson. Congressman, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks very much for being here. I don't understand how some of your colleagues get away with this. You've got AOC saying, oh, we're going to tank this bill unless we get what we want. You've got Democrats in Texas deciding, you know what, we're just going to blow off all of this work and we're going to get on a private jet and get out of town so that we don't give them a quorum. How is this? I mean, how is this even professional?
Well, it's clearly not professional, and it's also not sound. I mean, you've pointed it out. The money isn't there. Nobody's even lending it to us. It's just created, poof, there's money. And I guess that's how they think it works.
So what are the realistic, practical end results here that may happen? Do you believe you'll get an infrastructure deal done and agreed upon with your colleagues? Are you married to the idea that if you do this infrastructure, the only way it gets done is if you sign on to a $3.5 trillion spending plan elsewhere? How does the next month or so play out with all of this?
Well, that's what Speaker Pelosi promised. I mean, frankly, when the senators thought they had done a deal for $1 trillion that avoided some of this bad spending, that was part of their case for doing a deal that was bad, so they wouldn't get something worse. Nancy Pelosi made it very clear to President Biden that that's not going to happen in the House. We're going to get the full package, and it's going to go through on budget reconciliation. So they're pushing for this full bundled $3.5 trillion of progressive priorities, and then $1 trillion infrastructure bill that frankly isn't even all infrastructure. So that's the power play. We'll see whether President Biden's going to run the call or Speaker Pelosi. But if it's up to Speaker Pelosi and the Democrats in the House, they'll run it through with a complete party line process, no amendments, and just call the power play. The question is the Senate going to back that play? And that gives a lot of leverage to people like Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema, anyone else who might join their ranks to try to counter AOC. I mean, there's only a 5-seat majority in the House, and so that's the line they're trying to walk. Rather than try to collaborate with Republicans to get something done with a consensus, they're trying to do it all on party line basis.
Right, which is why they're trying to jam in as much as possible in this period, knowing that these policies are certainly not going to get them reelected, one would expect. Patrice, jump in here. It feels like a shakedown. I mean, honestly, I'll agree to infrastructure so long as you agree to another $3.5 trillion in spending.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it's horrific, and the inflation's. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Congressman.
Well, the inflation that's coming behind it, I mean, the monetary inflation that's coming in is growing the wealth gap. So the things that they're asking for are actually doing more damage to the things that they say they're trying to address.
Well, just a follow-up question for you. I mean, do you think that AOC is really going to hold the line on this, or do you think they're so much of a purist that they're willing to tank all of their Democratic their far left wish list just because they don't get one or two things like climate change or the family policy big spending programs they have? Are they that committed to dying on that hill?
Well, I think they're committed to getting everything they can, and they'll threaten that up till the point they don't. But I think Speaker Pelosi still has a lot of power. When she puts it on the floor, Democrats vote in lockstep. You don't see Democrats break ranks very often, so I'd be surprised if Speaker Pelosi puts anything less than the $3.5 trillion on the floor. But if she does, it will mean that they already privately agree to some other number. The 3.5 is just leverage.
So that tells me they don't really care about infrastructure at all. I mean, it's all smoke and mirrors just so that they could get their $3.5 trillion package through. It's not caring about
Well,
the
the
people.
infrastructure
Now,
that they're
Congressman, let's
talking
switch
about,
gears because,
everything
yep,
qualifies as
yep,
infrastructure.
right. I love this idea that it's called human infrastructure. I mean, it's just so goofy. Congressman, you introduced the Vaccine Passport Prevention Act. Tell me about this bill. I know it would prevent governments at the state and local and federal level from requiring proof of a vaccination in exchange for services or employment. Why is this important to you?
Look, people shouldn't have to submit to this invasion of privacy to resume their lives. To go back to normal, to go watch a ball game or something like that, the idea that you've got to show something about your private health status is offensive. I think it's an incredible violation of civil liberties.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. And even though it is, there are many companies that are just going to have their own rules, right? You know, Morgan Stanley on Wall Street said, if you're not vaccinated, don't come back to the trading desk.
Well, they are, but, some states like Florida, looking at Governor DeSantis trying to put leverage even on private businesses. And look, people say, well, that's a private business. The government shouldn't have a role. We see the whole definition of that shifting with the administration. Jen Psaki yesterday saying we're pointing out to Facebook all the things they need to block and filter. And the real question is, how big does a government need to be? It needs to be big enough and strong enough to defend freedom. And the reality is freedom is under attack in a collusion sort of way between the left wing of the American political spectrum and big businesses. And so they're working together to try to implement their policy. And look, on a public health matter, people should care about that. But historically, we've protected people's right to privacy, particularly with health matters.
Yeah, I mean, look, you've pointed to and hit on something really important, and this collusion between government and social media. We're going to talk more about it. And that is, by the way, the basis of President Trump's lawsuit against big tech and their CEOs. So, Congressman, thanks very much for bringing it up. We're going to continue digging in on that. Those comments from Jen Psaki yesterday were just incredible. Warren Davidson, thank you so much, sir. We'll check in soon. We appreciate your time this morning.